Morning, everybody. I'm so happy to be here, and on behalf of the employers group of the Economic and Social Committee, I would like to welcome State Secretary, Madam Mayor of Turku, dear guests, dear friends, dear speakers. We are so happy to be here, and for those who don't know our institution, just let me tell you briefly that the European Economic and Social Committee is an advisory body of the EU, which has been established at the beginning of the Europe integration back with the Treaty of Rome. And we represent enterprises, employers, businesses, but also trade unions and non-governmental organizations. This event is co-organized by the Employers Group, which embraces more than 100 representatives of very different business, employers, industrial organizations from all 28 member states, and many of them are today with us, so also welcome to the members today. So, of course, one of the principles of our work is that we want to be, and we are very close to our members' organizations. And let me here thank Confederation of Finnish Industries for possibility to co-organizing this event together, and for also strong support from our friends. Also looking forward for further cooperation during the presidency, of course, because we are planning to have a meeting in Helsinki in October as well. That's a group. But I'd like also to say special thanks to our Finnish member, Tellervo, who was actually a primus motor behind this debate that we will have today. Let me also express my gratitude to Madam Mayor of Turku for organizing this incredible event. I think this shows how Europe can actually promote idea of integration in a very constructive way. I think the discussion, even frank, difficult, but discussion about Europe is what we want, and I think that is exactly the way how we can further strengthen the ties between different member states, different stakeholders, different interests, if I may say so. We have been also privileged to participate yesterday in the Economic Day of Eurooppa-foorumi, which was very interesting with a very good intervention of the Minister of Economy. We discussed issues like a single market innovation, and I'm really very happy that we can have also today State Secretary to continue that debate with us for the next 2 hours. Ladies and gentlemen, issues like 4.0 digitalization, internal market, SMEs, trade for a long time have been on the employers group agenda. And I'm really very happy to have this meeting today. I will be finishing very quickly because we have a very good panel and keynote speech ahead of us. But just to tell that we've been working on this for many, many years, and I will be more than happy, and our group will be happy to add the outcome of our debate today to what we have already done in many places in Europe, discussing issues of upcoming challenges, because that's exactly what we are discussing. So this we had already discussions in Tallinn, Sofia, Varna, Vilnius, Madrid, Vienna, Sopot, Cambridge, Riga, Helsinki, Bucharest, and Valletta. We are traveling with our members, for our members, and for our members' organizations, trying to connect and have debate with the people who actually are on the ground, because that's really what counts in our business. The topic that we will discuss today is not only European, it's a global topic. And actually, I had a very interesting experience just in July 17th EU-China Roundtable, which was held in Shanghai. And as a part of the high-level delegation, I can only send this message that issues like digitalization or artificial intelligence have been absolutely on the top of the agenda. So I think this was quite amazing to see people on the other side who are just discussing issues of digitalization, of automation, of AI. I think this only shows that the issues are really going far beyond the continent. They are truly global issues that we have to really tackle together, not only for our economies, but also really for our societies, because that will also have a huge impact on the future of the societies as we know it today. I want also to take opportunity to thank all the speakers for accepting our kind invitation and devoting time to this debate. Now I would be more than happy to give a floor to Taneli Lahti, who is Director for the EU and Trade Policy in the Confederation of Finnish Industries, for your introductory remarks, and then we will hear the State Secretary. Welcome, and it's our privilege to be here with you today. Please.
Thank you so much, Mr. Kravchik. Thank you so much. Two things just very quickly before we hand over to Mr. Partanen, and who will introduce today's debate. First of all, really our great gratitude and to the Economic and Social Committee, and that you made the travel to Turku. I think it is extremely important, and when we are having a discussion about Europe and about European affairs here in Turku, that Europe is also here and present. That it is not only us and talking to each other, but that we have a genuine European angle to the issues that we discuss. So for that I really am very glad that such a large and important delegation of the employees group is here yesterday and today, and I hope and you have enjoyed Turku a little bit, and that you have seen a bit of this corner of Europe. It has its own particularities, its own European history. I think Turku actually has been the Finnish window to Europe and for centuries, and so I think this is a very good place and for this kind of dialogue and debate to take place. The second issue I wanted to mention actually and has to do with the visit we did yesterday and to the Meyer shipyard with the group of guests here, and we went and saw what is happening at the shipyard. And one thing I think was important, and something that I hope and we remember and stick to us, and the confidence with which and the people at the shipyard spoke about the future. And when they spoke about the global competition and the competitive situation, they mentioned the Chinese competition picking up, and they mentioned companies and who are enjoying government benefits and suggesting that it may not be fully even and the competition, but nevertheless, and there was confidence that with being a bit more innovative than everybody else, with being in the forefront of technological development, and by being a bit more efficient than everybody else, they will stick ahead and they will do well, and they will be building ships in 10, 20, 30 years time. And I think this was really encouraging, because this is a bit a European story, and we believe that we are a bit passé, and that the rest of the world has already bypassed us, and we are facing a dire future. But actually, and we do have quite a lot of competitive edge still, and it has to do very much with innovation, with research, with being a bit smarter, a bit more intelligent than the competition. And here I also think, and one important thing that we have here in Europe, which is basically unique, it doesn't exist in the same sense in anywhere else in the world. And the Chinese and the Americans, they invest more or less the same amount of money to research and innovation than Europe does. But I'm pretty sure that in China, the return on that investment is not nearly as good as it is here. There's one thing, and if you research and if you innovate, if you want to develop something new, you need information, you need freedom of information. In China, you don't have that. You need to be able to think differently. You need to be able to challenge. You need to be able to ask questions. You need to be able to also sometimes miss the mark and not be punished for it. And these freedoms we have in Europe, in China, less so. And I believe that for innovation, and that is actually a clear competitive advantage that we have compared to the others. Second thing, of course, rule of law. If we innovate, if we come up with new products, new services, we have to be able to be sure that what is ours, that property is protected, and that the rules that we have in the European marketplace are evenly applied everywhere. That we find the same application of rules wherever in the single market we go. So with these advantages that we have, I think, and we actually have a fairly bright future ahead of us, but of course then these advantages are also such that they have to be taken care of. Freedom of expression, a rule of law, freedom of being of different view, I think is actually of key importance for the economy. With these words, State Secretary Partanen, I'm extremely glad to have you here. We've discussed earlier about the future of Europe and where the competitive advantages may lie, and I'm looking forward to hear your introduction. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Taneli. Mr. Chair, dear friends of Smart and Intelligent Europe, it is a great pleasure to meet you all this forum. This topic is all the time more and more important. Active discussion about this theme is always valuable. My keynote speech is based on 4 parts. Finland's presidency of the Council in European Union, digitalization, digital economy, and artificial intelligence. First, few aspects about digitalization. Digitalization has been identified as one of the major trends changing the society and business. Today, rapid technological advances, international competition, and climate change are all challenging the European Union in new way. It is a challenge for all of us to work out new ways of creating sustainable growth, strengthen our competitiveness, and promote our well-being. It is no secret that digitalization also provides us with tools and solutions for tackling the new challenges. Digital transformation is essential for Europe, for our competitiveness in the global markets, and for the well-being of our citizens. Finland has been holding the presidency of the Council of the European Union since beginning of July. To make the most out of our 6 months with the leadership in the European Union, we started our work right away. In the beginning of July, we held the informal meeting of the ministers responsible for competitiveness at Finlandia Hall in Helsinki. We called for a new holistic way to discuss the broad topic of European competitiveness. We invited to our joint meeting both the European Union ministers responsible for research and the European Union minister responsible for the single market, industry, and competitiveness. We found our meeting to be an effective means to cover comprehensively the topics of single market, industrial policy, research and innovation policy, and the digital economy. They all play a vital part in strengthening the European competitiveness. Dear friends, during our presidency, we find it very important to promote forward-looking, digital economy policies. The European Union must strive to become a global leader in the digital economy. Europe needs a coherent digital policy which will enable cross-border innovation, competitiveness, and uptake of key technologies so that European business can grow and compete successfully worldwide. Also, the pressing need towards climate neutrality challenges all industries and all value chains. At the same time, this transition creates great opportunities for the digital economy. There is increasing market potential for circular and climate-friendly solutions based on digital technologies and particularly better utilization of data. One of our main messages during the months of our Council presidency is that European Union needs to unlock the full potential of the data economy, platform economy, artificial intelligence, and other emerging technologies for achieving sustainable economic growth, ensuring a high level of employment, and combating climate change. We need to work together towards achieving a digital economy that is sustainable, secure, reliable, competitive, and socially inclusive. We need to focus on strengthening and mainstreaming digital transformation in companies in all sectors and of all sizes, but especially in SMEs. The question is, how do we reach these ambitious goals? As data plays a key role in digital transformation, we believe that the tools for reaching these goals should include developing a comprehensive roadmap for the regulatory landscape on data. We need to promote fair and innovative use and reuse of data and proper function of privacy rules. We need to enhance access, interoperability, and connectivity, and develop our understanding and principles of sharing and of the ownership of data. Ethics and integrity are important aspects in this discussion. Focus is clear: strengthening ecosystems for European industrial data and find ways encourage sharing, joint use, and pooling of data. Dear friends of digitalization, there is a wisdom in saying that the more digitalized company, the higher are the prospects for growth and aiming for global markets. This is why we also need to focus on the digital transformation here in Finland. I'm very happy to say that Finland is the leading digital economy in Europe. Just recently, in June, the European Commission ranked Finland as #1 country in Europe in digital performance and competitiveness in the so-called DESI index. Looking at that rankings, I believe we can say that we have done some things right. And because of our success in these areas, our opinion and our leaderships counts in European level. However, there is still work to do, especially in making sure that all companies, I underline this, are on the board during this time of rapid changes in the business environment. Digital ambition and capabilities need to be stronger, especially in SMIs and in sectors that are currently lagging behind. Dear friends, in the area of artificial intelligence, Finland was the first country in the European Union to formulate a national AI strategy in 2017. Now, 2 years later, almost all European Union member states are working on that topic. AI and other emerging technologies are key tools for improving for European Union's competitiveness as part of the global data economy. Therefore, we have to make sure that all European companies have the understanding, courage, and skills to develop and apply AI. Also, AI should not be used only to improve existing operations, make supply chains more effective, or to improve customer services with chatbots. The biggest potential of AI to the European competitiveness lies is the new kind of business models and value chains that it enables. Ethical, fair, and trustworthy AI can be a competitive edge for Europe. It is essential to support European citizens' trust in the new technology and digital society in general. New technologies can be expected to be widely adopted only when the technologies can be trusted. Mr. Chair, ladies and gentlemen, to conclude, innovation plays an important role as an engine for renewal and productivity. The Finnish innovation policy aims to create an environment that encourages enterprises to bold innovation, renewal, and international growth. We have a goal of increasing Finland's expenditure to GDP's ratio for research, development, and innovation to 4% by 2030. Promoting ecosystems that will boost the competitive strength of companies and all stakeholders in the ecosystem is essential for enhancing innovations. Ecosystems also play an increasingly important role in innovations and value creation in platform economy. Therefore, in Europe, we need data-intensive and strategically managed platforms and ecosystems in various individual business sectors, but increasingly also those that operate across sectors. I'm very happy to notice that Mr. Sauli Eloranta will present the next talk about 1C, which is a great example of modern ecosystem, a testbed, and public-private partnership. With these words, I wish you all a productive and innovative day here at Eurooppa-foorumi in Turku. Thank you.
Chairman, distinguished guests, so thank you very much for the opportunity to actually be presenting to such an audience in my hometown. Normally we, coming from the outskirts of the union, we have to normally travel, south and west and what have you, all over the places, and it's a great pleasure being here. Very close to the birthplace of this 1C ecosystem, because it was more or less conceived 300 meters towards Helsinki from this room. So actually it was born in a European Union member state, and it was formed by, let's say, traditional industry, shipbuilding-based industry, which we heard from Taneli that is actually now flourishing in this town, and also still remaining in Europe, just like aerospace. And this autonomous maritime ecosystem is what I think most people consider it's a prime example of a functioning, business-driven, collaborative effort to renew and transform an existing industry. What's important is that we could not do this alone with our industry. We could not think that only mariners, shipbuilders, and people from our industry could really transform our own industry. We needed a high dose of ICT expertise. Finland is a great nation because of ex-Nokia and other things that I think still Finland has the highest proportion of ICT workforce as a proportion of the total workforce of any OECD country. So therefore it's quite natural that if a very classical industry is being transformed, it can start from here. The quite simple goal of the ecosystem is to create a fully functioning, fully operational autonomous maritime transport system by 2025. And this same vision has been already from the start, so from late 2016. And we just had a strategy meeting yesterday, and we concluded that we're still maintaining this vision. So it's actually a good sign that sometimes you feel that these trends, technology trends, are coming up faster or slower, what have you. This has been quite a stable understanding what it is. We have a PPP organization, DIMEC, that is hosting this thing. We have 2 full-time employees, not more than that, but they are the people who are administering these activities. Most importantly, it is these commercial leading business companies that are most important in this ecosystem. So the participants and the partners of the ecosystem, they are practically all the leading companies in the maritime industry that are developing this type of technology for a vessel size application. There are some small startups in Israel, in the UK, in the US, for example, that are making solutions for boat-sized things, but they are not really intended for heavy safety critical applications, as if you can think that you have a huge cargo ship utilizing this type of technology for autonomous operation, that it needs to be properly considered, for safety cases. A list of companies is here. You should be familiar with actually quite a few of these companies. ABB from Switzerland, Cargotec just made a deal with a Norwegian fertilizer company, Yara, that they are making a fully automated port facility for the world's first autonomous vessel called Yara Birkeland in Norway. Ericsson, a mobile and telecoms company. Finnpilot doing pilotage. In here, Inmarsat, a UK-based maritime satellite communications company. Monohakobi is Nippon Yusen Kaisha's a Japanese huge maritime conglomerate's research arm. Kongsberg, the leading Norwegian tech company, also quite heavily engaged in defense business, and our unit is actually, my employer is Kongsberg Maritime at this moment. They acquired the maritime business of Rolls-Royce earlier this year on April 1st. So this idea was more or less launched by Rolls-Royce Marine people 3 years ago, and now that has been replaced with Kongsberg. Same people more or less though. Tieto is a ICT company. Wärtsilä is a well-known one of the largest, of course, maritime companies in the world. So what's important here is that this is not an academic exercise. It's not really political exercise. It's not a consulting exercise. It's a business exercise. And this is something what I have been always thinking, that how do I tell my European colleagues what's unique in this approach? And it is so that, for example, ABB and Wärtsilä and Kongsberg are fierce competitors. It's important to acknowledge that it is possible to combine the forces of European competitive companies in some areas. The collaboration needs to be pre-competitive, as you can later on see from these activities what we do. But it is possible to have a discussion forum and even a strategy forum with competitors when the strategy means, for example, how you can introduce new technology to the market, not really technological solutions, but what are the requirements regulatory-wise or ethical-wise or operational-wise, for those solutions. In the simplest way, you could say that consumer electronics business has been quite proactive, when we have our USB ports and what have you. Many of those simple solutions that are providing interoperability to our personal digital devices have been based on similar collaboration across leading technical companies in the world. So instead of having a very competing ecosystem, so a bit like Apple has its own ecosystem, but you have to be quite big if you want to go that way. So this is to convince you that in Europe we do have a very strong commercially oriented, business oriented, strategic alliance consisting of really global leaders in this technology. These are all global leaders. We don't have such companies in the US, nor Israel, nor Japan, nor China that would be stronger than these companies together. So I think my vision for Europe would be that this type of approach would be maybe the chance of addressing what Jari was also saying, how can we ensure competitiveness in digitalization in Europe. Our maybe not adversaries, but let's say our competitors and contenders, they have, Alibabas and Amazons and what have you. We are streaming voluntarily all our data for free, to US and China, and we do it happily. So what I would like to see is that we as domain experts, as maritime people, if we combine this strong digitalization and add collaboration, sprinkle a bit of collaboration on top of that, I think we do have a chance. If we all, coming from various member states, are competing against each other, so that if this 1C ecosystem was perceived to be seen as a Finnish exercise, then we have failed. And we know that we started from one member state. It's quite difficult, to get the trust in place. Now we are ready to expand this. And our most important topic for the next 2 years is the strong internationalization of this activity. A couple of words about, let's say, the benefits of digitalization. Of course, digitalization in maritime is a very wide topic. You can have anything in there. Mainly, we talk about autonomous ships. That doesn't mean that those ships would go without a crew. So autonomous ships is more like an umbrella that you have enhanced situational awareness. So today, people really don't see much around them. There were only 50 total losses last year. Great, 50% less than the year before. Then we had 100 total losses, 100 ships sinking every year globally. Then this technology is touching the human element, the human error, which is covering for 90% of such losses. In the case of better perception about the ship's environment, ships do have eyes, of the mariner, and they do have a radar and GPS. That's about it. And our technology is saying that, with proper technology, you could see much more, and you could have automated alerts if you want to see around. But safety is the most important topic, at this stage before we go to real autonomization and sustainability. Lots of activities, what we do in the ecosystem. Again, apologies for the vague perception of the word ecosystem, because it could mean pretty much anything. Here you can see a bit of what it is. So we are also creating R&D programs. We are influencing rules and regulations nationally and internationally. We have established test areas. I can show you some stuff. And we do really guide the entire world how it goes, let's say, how it implements this strategy. We were the first ones in the world to present this whole strategy for the global maritime business. And I bet that the maritime people and maritime sector wouldn't have picked it up if it hadn't been picked up by the large public first, because it was very media interesting story about, you know, ghost ships and what have you, even though it was not the full story, but it raised a lot of public interest. And therefore our industry kind of felt that, yeah, maybe it's coming. And there was a tipping point, I think it was about 3 years ago, when, you know, the shipping industry as a whole said that, yes, this might happen. Now we are only discussing about when. We do have a test area, which is important. We do have similar test areas also for road transport, and this is a dedicated test area. What's important, and where Finland can support the union, is that I'm sure that our ministries would be very happy to support their colleagues in other member states in consulting how to establish a test area, because there were lots of ministries involved. I don't know any ministry in Finland who was not involved in this case, and the fishermen and everybody. But thank God it's now in legislation. It's in all the VTS charts, you know, all the coordinates are there. So it's official and it's open. For IMO, which is the International Maritime Organization, and their safety committee meetings, we have been presenting twice for 45 minutes for 173 flag states, so all the seafaring nations in the world that are IMO members. We have first in the world presented this thing to that organization. The first one was in 2017, and that started the rule-changing process globally. And now it's the primary topic of the International Maritime Organization to establish regulatory framework for autonomous ships. But again, you know, 300 meters west from this place was where all this was conceived. I'm just saying that, you know, in Europe, you know, if there is a will, there is a way. You know, if you have, let's say, your good educational background, you have a visionary thing, you have a good innovation framework, you can do this. But I bet that nobody really thought that in 2017, 1 year after we had established this ecosystem, we would be standing, you know, in front of IMO in London. And now it's all in full speed, and it will take many years before the regulatory thing is in place, but it will go there. On the other hand, we did have a very active Minister of Transport previously, and she was quite proactive in renewing legislation related to this thing. So today, tests with autonomous ships are entirely legal in Finland. That legislation has been in place for a year. And remote pilotage is already legal without limitations. You need to have a separate certificate for it. But Finland is the only country in the world where that is legal. And again, I hope that our dear colleagues in the ministries would be willing to share those experiences with other member states. You know, if you want to promote digitalization, being it legal to test and operate is, you know, good to be going hand in hand with technology development. So that has been a very successful case. And then just a list of activities by the member companies. These member or partners of One Sea ecosystem have been basically the only companies making true full-scale, ship-scale demonstrations of this technology. One was, probably the most important one was remote operation and autonomous operation of a passenger ferry here in the close to Turku, 40 kilometers from here. And some people from this audience were participating in that event. And we had 100 VIP guests on board that ferry when actually the captain was not touching the levers. And you have to know, if it was Rolls-Royce time, so you know Rolls-Royce wouldn't really enter any risky business or risky demonstrations, then you know that the technology actually works. But there is still a long way after a demonstration before you can take it into commercial use. But it has been so great to see that within, let's say, 3 years of this journey, you can see all these things. You know, you can elevate European players and a European alliance or collaboration platform to be leading in the world. And I hope that we haven't yet seen all, so we are still thinking that we can still make and cement this ecosystem to be an integral part of international regulatory development, for example, going forward. And the membership of the ecosystem is open. It's open for businesses, though. They can be government-run businesses or privately run businesses, but this is still a selection that we want to have a business-oriented ecosystem 100% at this moment. We have contributed to a creation of an academic and research ecosystem called Research Alliance on Autonomous Systems that is run by VTT in Finland, having some of the universities, and I hope that they would also start their internationalization journey just like we have. So ladies and gentlemen, so this is a brief introduction to our ecosystem, so thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, and and I'm so proud to say it's 10:15, so we are exactly on time. So thank you for that introduction to all of the colleagues here, and I would like to ask now Professor Kari Lyuhto, the head of Pan-European Institute of University of Turku, to take the lead and invite and introduce the panelists. Please, we are not leaving the room, it will take just 1 minute. Thank you very much. Thank you indeed.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and please, speakers, I would kindly ask you to come to the floor. President, State Secretary, Mayor, distinguished audience. The EU and its member states have put a lot of effort on building their capacities related to digitalization and artificial intelligence. Finland is no exception. Finland started its artificial intelligence program last year, as mentioned by State Secretary Partanen just a moment ago in his keynote speech. In addition to government-level development, intelligence systems are already in use, for example, in maintenance of ships and elevators, transportation, as we heard just a moment ago, stock market evaluation, customer service, and daily grocery shoppings, security, and many, many other fields. Meaning, artificial intelligence is no longer science fiction. But everyday life of us, and most probably the development speed, will accelerate in the forthcoming years. Thus, this panel tries to peel a hot potato, which will become most probably even hotter in the years to come. The panel will be organized as follows. After my brief introduction, there will be 5 to 6 minute opening statements by each speaker. And after each presentation, I give an opportunity to very short comments or questions to each speaker. And at the end of the panel, there will be around half an hour for discussion. And I would really encourage the audience to take part in this with the difficult questions even, and provoke our speakers, because we have extremely qualified group of speakers, and they are representing various different fields, so I think we could find even solutions to many, many issues. And the speakers have been asked to touch the following questions. What is needed to be a front runner in innovation? How can we ensure the availability of skills and competencies needed in today's business? How can we make the data flow? Is funding a problem? What is expected from the regulatory framework? Not very easy questions, but I think we will be able to answer to most of these. Ladies and gentlemen, you have received in seminar package the bio notes of all the speakers. I don't use too much time on this. I go directly to the issue, not to waste time. And I hope that we can be very informal, and that's the reason I'm using first names. Okay. Minna, in 2029, the city of Turku will turn 800 years. Can an old city be a front runner in a rather new and fast developing field as a digitalization? Minna, can Turku show a way to other cities of Europe in terms of digitalization? At least the city strategy refers to digitalization and various digital services at least 20 times. So can Turku lead a way in this very challenging field as a digitalization and artificial intelligence? The floor is yours.
So, dear friends, distinguished guests, first of all, I want to wish you very warmly welcome to Turku and to this Joki Innovation Center, which is the heart of our Science Park area. And what is our Science Park? It's our heart of doing collaboration between different bodies like universities, universities of applied sciences, cities and businesses all together. And that's what I would say will be the core of my presentation, and also the core which I think is kind of the most important part of our success here in this area. And there are actually quite a lot of similar kind of elements which Sauli was already presenting about the idea of ecosystems and the ones here. So we kind of think that this should be done in a way in an ecosystem or thinking about this widely, because I strongly believe in collective intelligence, and I don't see that a person or an organization could do something by themselves. But when you are putting different persons, human beings, different organizations all together and working for the same goal, then you are actually achieving the success, which is in the heart of also innovation. So this second Eurooppa-forum, I'm really proud that you are here and having this event here, so thank you once again very much for that. So to the point, I would like to showcase some of the ideas and actions taken here in Turku, oldest city in Finland, as Kari already mentioned, but I think the history gives us a strength to see the future in a little bit bolder way, that we have seen that there are things been happening during the centuries, and it gives us the strength to really think our city not only an enabler, but an activator for this area, and as a platform for use of furthering their innovations for others also, not only for the city. So here you actually see the ferry Sauli was mentioning that was doing the autonomous trip like a few months ago, nearly a year ago, there in Archipelago, and I was very lucky one to be attending to that cruise, or how to say, test cruise for the first autonomous ferry cruise in the world. But being innovative, we need to see the strength of multi-sectoral nature as a city. We have different branches of research and businesses here. Maritime industry, very strong industry in Finland, but especially in this part of Finland, and a very historical business here in Turku. Health sector, clean tech, pharmaceutical industry, logistics, food industry, and much more. And a lot of research is going in Turku, which gives us a unique possibility to collide academic world, academic research to practical businesses challenges. So we as a city think ourselves that we are tailor-made to be used as a platform. So we are offering our city to be as a platform for experiments, for tests, simulations, and other innovative approaches. There are two universities in Turku. Turku University, which is the Finnish-speaking university, and Åbo Academy, which is the Swedish-speaking university. And by the way, they are very fluent in English, both. But in addition, we have also several universities of applied sciences. So all our universities are successful and well-known for one. For example, even though there are not such an own Nobel Prize, but one Nobel Prize winner, Mr. Dr. Hall, he was starting his research here in the University of Turku, and then in the end, his research group ended up with the Nobel Prize in 2014 for research they really started, or he really started here as a young researcher in Turku University. So I already mentioned some business branches which are successful in our region. For instance, the biggest cruise ship. I heard that you were, and part of you were visiting yesterday the Meyer shipyard. How many of you were there yesterday? Yeah. So this is something amazing. They are really actually building every time a new city. It's not a ship, it's not a cruiser, it's a new city every time, and it's more to the previous one. And not only the maritime industry, not only the Meyer shipyard, but 75% of Finnish medicine export is also generated here in Turku, and 20 out of 21 Finnish drugs which are brought to the market have been developed and innovated in Turku-based companies. I dare to say that our cooperation between the universities, companies, and the city has brought us really a success and has made us the best functioning city area in this wise in the world. There are a lot of smart city initiatives in the world, and in most of the cities, if they have some kind of, stats to this day, they are calling them that they are telling that they have a smart city initiatives. We have broadened this idea a little bit. We think that we are smart and wise city, and it's one of our spreadhead projects here in the city, and it combines the strategic goal like the carbon neutrality. So we have the aim to be the carbon neutral city by 2029, which is really an ambitious goal. And by doing that and how we can do that, we see that we need a lot of these kind of elements which are brought in the how to use data. But this wise part is an interesting part because it includes us, the human beings, into this smart city concept. And that's what I think in all of the things we cannot never forget what is the purpose and the use and the kind of essential is to remember the human beings also. And in our sense is of course also our responsibility as a city for our citizens. So we take new technologies in use, and how we take them into use is this that in our smart and wise city concept. And you can see there are 6 different points, focus areas where we are working on this smart and wise city spreadhead. But what I think is really interesting that we have also included our prevention of social exclusion under this smart and wise city spreadhead project. And while we have a lot of data, how we know how these exclusion processes are going on. So it's actually about how we can take advantage and how we can use that data we have. And that's why it's here also. So our mindset needs to change from the traditional organizational-orientated to citizen-orientated or human, or in other words, human-orientated, human-centric approach. Services must be developed on demand in the future, and we also as a city has to understand how people are willing to use the services in the future in order to be kind of having the legislative, or not legislative, don't reach the word now, but in order that people think that it's right and justified for us also to provide services by their tax monies. Yeah, so in the end, it's how to use the data. The collection of data is quite easy, but how to use it wisely and how to understand how to use it, it's the big thing. Opening city for development for our stakeholders, we give the possibility to create and validate new services together with us. In the future, we will work more and more in local, but not only local, but national and international networks where we are actually colliding and experiencing and learning from each other, which will put us in the front of question of trust and ethics in a new way. There are issues that are solved and formulated together in national and EU level, and I think that is the one of the things that also we have to discuss in these kind of groups and the discussions that which are really those frameworks where we are working. So thank you very much. Really happy to see you all here.
Thank you, Minna. So you underlined several times the idea that collective knowledge and collective intelligence. So we have all heard about the word triple helix, so-called the cooperation between universities and businesses and government or cities. How do you see that in 2029, when Turku will turn out 800 years, so which is quite a respectable number already, so are you expecting something more from businesses or even universities? What should we do more in order to achieve the most of this triple helix cooperation?
I think one thing what we should add into this triple helix thinking is to add it to be kind of quadruple helix, so that we are actually taking the citizens and the people also into this circle, not only thinking between different organizations, but also including how we actually, to whom we are actually doing all these kind of things, whom we are developing services, to whom we are as a business services or the city services, and how we are actually making the cities and the world a better place. So that's a big challenge still, and I think that's something we should work together to include citizens and people more into this circle.
Thank you. I think that goes very well in line what Mr. Lahti mentioned in his opening, that comparing China and European Union, we are open, and I think here we can have much more trust between each other, and even Mr. Eloranta, you mentioned, which is quite unique to have close cooperation between competitors. But ladies and gentlemen, if you have any questions or comments, or please raise your hand, and not yet, but they will come perhaps at the end of the panel. Then we have in line Mia-Petra Kumpula-Natri, and Mia-Petra, you were graduated as an engineer, and you have worked several years in the European Parliament with a focus on energy and especially digitalization. How do you see the situation? Is Europe smart and intelligent enough to become even smarter and more intelligent? Mia-Petra, please.
Thank you, Kari, and thank you for the invitation. And then some of you we met already yesterday, and I'm happy to continue and then target for the digitalization, which we heard from the State Secretary Jari presented. It's very, very important theme for the Finnish presidency as well. And I liked very much that Taneli also took up this rule of law as a business point of view for that, because this is what we want to enhance also during our presidency, that we have the Europe that we can trust. And the trust is for the societies, trust is for the public organization, but then the trust is also for the digital. So let me, as an engineer for the NMT times, then now we count how many G's you put online. And so it is also that for the former engineer, it is quite difficult to keep updated what's happening, and then try to understand the entrepreneurs, what you want from the politicians. And I say already to start, it's too easy to say do not regulate at all, because that's what we are for. We do regulate, but then we should regulate it on the right way. So what do you think it's needed from the politics, from the European politics? I think, and then it's time to elaborate it together, that did I guess right from your perspective that what we need, first of all, if we want to get digitalized, we need connections. It's quite hard to get connected without the basic infrastructure that should be on place. And for the infrastructure, we need kind of market rules. On that sector, if we take out the regulation, we should still have only few market dominant players, former state-owned companies on the telcos. So I worked a lot, and it was worked before in the European Union to regulate the market so that there is competition. And if I look now the new ideas, it only started in the different member states, boosting and getting rapid when there was competition and not only one state or owned big telco, because they then also speeded up when there were many other opportunities. But now what we want on my term, I will continue as an ITRE member on the digital and engineering innovation and that committee. We will now look after what happens with the 5G. We really do hope that the everywhere, every corner, no digital cap will remain, because it's important for the citizens, but it's important also for the data economy, if that is what we look for. And I think that is what we do look for. So the investments on the networks and the concrete infrastructure is very important. Then I think that we do not, if we have the infrastructure on place, we need some people to work on the infrastructure, and so we need entrepreneurs. We need condition for the entrepreneurs to bloomish and then grow in Europe, but then also we need people to know and have the knowledge. And this is not the competition, the competitive part of the European Union, but it is on the national level. So when I look at the education, R&D, it is much on the member states, and I'm so happy of the Finnish government now aiming to this 4% of the R&D. Actually, I was one of the negotiators in the European Parliament in between the four political parties to try to play the first political program for the Parliament and then the cooperation. And I tried a little bit test that shouldn't it be European aim to invest 4% for the R&D? Because now we want to eagerly increase the Horizon Europe money. And I think most of you are willing to see that one as well, that Europe has, as Taneli said in the beginning, the comparison to the US or China, do we invest on R&D? But what is the result then? And we increase money in Horizon Europe if the member states then drew back. Did we get more public money? No, we didn't get, because member states withdraw their share, and then we increase on the European level. We then know, of course, a lot of complaints that why do our member states pay that much and why we did not get more from Europe. So I think it's not legislative possibility to dictate that European levels you should member states use this much, but shouldn't it be at least a target that we increase the whole turnout, the public investment or R&D, but then also the private one, but then the public on the both levels, European and the national level. So I don't know. At least I try to speak about it so they have the idea that not to cut back on one place and then increase on one if the target is to invest more. So then for the students, for the knowledge side, it is a lot on the national level. And then what we have done in the European level, we have like sent letters together with the digital commissioner to Maria Gabriel, like, please invest on the women on IT as well. If the number of IT workers is increasing everywhere and the women are not included, that's stupid for the whole economies that we do have. So then, and do we have everybody on board to at least understand, having the knowledge and understanding? I think it's crucial also to have it in the basic educational system, that you have some knowledge. I don't know, does it need to be coding? I have been working with the Code Week. European Commission has promoted several years that make it visible and then everybody to understand, but at least the knowledge that somebody coded this ship. So I also liked very much the robotization in a report my former colleague made in the European Union, that should we at least be, like every one of us, to be aware when we interact with the AI or the robots. And I think that could be the first step also to legislate that. Yes, now your entrance test to the University of Turku is actually analyzed by the AI, so that should be mentioned there. Or when you, because normally when you meet an official, they have their responsibilities that you made a decision concerning your social benefit or your taxation or whatever. So at least that they get knowledge. And then also for the equipment. And so I think for the future generation, it is quite logical that they know that somebody coded it, somebody is behind it, or it's the AI result. But this kind of legislative causes I could maybe integrate for the European level. So then, so what I have mentioned, I think the infrastructure legislative, like framework also for the privacy, for the European values. If we make it the broad, as we talked yesterday, if you have the framework, then you have room to innovate it. And very good message from the Eloranta Sauli that also make it possible to make tests and try. So that is also important. And then, but then which I hear too often, do not legislate at all. We do need some rules for this kind of markets as well, and then the values that we want to respect. So when we talk about in AI, I think everywhere in European discussion, we don't forget to mention the human-centric. So when we say this human-centric, does it apply everywhere, like automatically? And I want to a little bit like wake you up and say that I think sometimes it does not. Sometimes it comes first to maximize value of your shareholders or your shares. So that is the first priority. But then now we need these European values to put on clearly that it is the human-centric. So it is not first the Cambridge Analytica that who got some money because they analyzed your data and then they blurred your Facebook accounts and then dictated. So if we have a legislation in order in time, we can try to avoid this kind of clashing of the values or the principles that we want to keep for the Europeans, the promise and trust, as was mentioned here, to the Europeans. So when we do legislate, I certainly think that legislating digitalization, it is important to legislate on the European level. Otherwise, you have the legislation on the national level. And then it's even more difficult, and it's bad for the entrepreneurs that you first have your national, then you have 28 different national versions or 15, and some do not regulate at all. And then we try to make it European level. Then you said, okay, but I just prepared my system for this national regulation, and then I know from my experience that it's much more difficult when you have existing. So shouldn't it be easy now that we do not have that much legislation and find in good cooperation the right ways to start with, and then start with quite the loose possibilities and then a very active participation in that one. So I really, really think that the European level legislation is an answer on this one, as we also talked yesterday about the single market. So I think the last the politician could do for the data economy is also to finance a little bit. So I talked about the R&D. We do have now in place the Digital Europe program proposal. We do have the Horizon Europe, of course, for the R&D, as I mentioned. But then Digital Europe also to create capabilities like the content. And then we do have the Connected European facility that I was the shadow rapporteur, especially on the digital and energy part. An idea is as good as it has been for the transportation. Every country, of course, maximizes contacts from Turku to Helsinki, which is not very much true yet if you look at the railway connection. But then internally, but then when and how and who looks the railway connections or road connections across the continent. So yes, it is very good and clear idea behind the Connecting European facilities. But now same should be carried on the energy side, but then also for the digitalization. I'm afraid that when the national states, the member states now will make the efforts with the lead of the Finnish presidency to try to formulate the MFF, they most easily cut the digital part. That has been earlier the case, and then it could be again. So then if you have a real idea that Europe should be front runner for the digital economy, why it is the first part to be cut again, this part that we could boost the digitalization? The answer many times is that because it's market driven, but then if you look at the speed that we need to invest and the speed we need to act to be competitive in the global scale compared to the Asian continent and the USA especially, we should also be willing to invest something together for this part as well. So, and everything is interlinked. Finnish presidency said also the sustainable future, sustainable Europe. I work in the committee for the energy and digitalization, and we cannot have a legislation that is so old-fashioned that would not meet the criteria of the climate change. So then also this is linked a lot when we see that also the capacities to invest on the digitalization when they meet the climate goals. It was a big news in the Ursula von der Leyen speech that she will create also the fund, the climate fund, that should deliver 1 trillion. So if we link digitalization into that, we are on the right path and we can deliver the data economy for Europe. Thank you.
Thank you so much. You probably have read book by Professor Yuval Noah Harari, and I think it's called Homo Deus, A Brief History of Tomorrow. In his book, Harari warns that the artificial intelligence will lead to a major disruption in labor markets. And shall we have even larger amounts of people who cannot adapt to the new situation? And this is something I a bit provoke, because artificial intelligence may have also some consequences which are not so positive. What is your opinion now when you look from the European level? This development, are we just looking the positive sides and not forgetting perhaps the shadow sides of this issue?
Yeah, I come from a S&D group, and then I was in the employment committee the last term. And in the beginning of the term, I think last time it was like the economic crisis was the headlines of the Europe, and for the good reason. So, and then the economical crisis was so hard that everybody thought that we don't afford to talk about the climate, and then we don't maybe afford to talk about the digitalization, which will then need less workforce. But if I look to Europe now, the countries that are most digitalized are not the countries that have most unemployment. So even that evidence should not make you be afraid. But then the best situation is for those who are the forerunners, because then you need workforce to innovate and then do that. So, and yesterday I met one guy working for the global business on the digitalization and who visited California and then Silicon Valley, and said that yes, there he could see that there are those very rich and very busy guys, and then those working for the service sector to drive there who could not afford to live there and serve them on the service sector, and it was like very polarized. But he said that everybody was unhappy. The others were unhappy because they were so busy and stressed, and the others were unhappy because they couldn't really afford. So maybe the European answer will be something more, and then we really need to talk about this, how to get the inclusive solutions. But I think that this is the social models that we also have in place in Europe, in the continent in average. And I think the new jobs will emerge. How many personal trainers did you know 20 years ago? and I do know many now. Or how many of you financed your studies delivering food or driving taxis? So yes, these are not very well protected socially, all these kind of jobs that is created, but then I think we are on the right path to look after and find solution. So I'm optimistic, and I also know that in the European Parliament there is a lot of optimism, because if we do not roboticize, if we do not take the advantage of the digitalization, the others will do, and then we will only get the widgets and gadgets from Asia, the content from California, and then we will be the users. So I want us to be the ecosystem providers, and then we will work for that, and we need workers.
Thank you, Mia-Petra. Sauli, you gave excellent keynote speech just a moment ago, and perhaps my only introductory question before you start again. How can we repeat it in other fields of industries as well as efficiently as you have done it in maritime sector? Please, Saul.
Yeah, I think we should learn from this, and I have always said to other industries that I'm available. So I have been consulting with healthcare, for example, the Helsinki region healthcare system, and I have been consulting, let's say, digitalized industries, manufacturing industries, and even forest industries. And the most difficult thing is that it seems like it is a very basic psychological thing that you need to have. The trust is the issue. It's nothing to do with the capability of those companies and technologies and what have you. But if you don't have the trust, and if you don't have probably the one ambassador that is creating the trust among those parties, it's very difficult to do that. And that is something that is a kind of a soft skill, but I think that is the key. And even better if that ambassador is coming from, let's say, at least one of the leading stakeholders in there. So that it's not, let's say, a person who does it as a side job, like a consultant or something, but truly a business owner to some extent, to drive that change, so that there's a strong business interest and then a very credible background organization for that ambassador to drive it. And then I think any industry can renew itself, when that can be done. But the renewal probably needs to start from the industry itself, from inside out. And that's the paradox, because the means only come from the outside. But if you send an outsider, an ICT geek, to any traditional industry, then the language barrier would be too high. So then the ICT geek doesn't use the words and phrases and doesn't understand the phenomena of those classical industries. That is important. So therefore, it needs to be an enlightened insider of an existing industry, I suppose, who sees enough outside world so that that person can interpret, that person has been on top of the mountain and seen how the change is affecting other similar industries, and then translate that message to that person's own industry. That can be done, but I would say that it's an interesting new skill in society is what we need probably more in the future. Did that satisfy your question?
That satisfied my question, but would you like to still have few minutes of your statement, or shall we go on? So
no. That was my sort of answer to your question. And then if I just dig a bit deeper into this ecosystem thing, and also what I would say that if we have this meeting and workshop set up by the employers group, I normally say that the change is good to start from yourself and not throw the ball to the Commission or member states or China or what have you. And I think being an industry representative, that actually our industry is not maybe active enough in all the forums where, let's say, strategic decisions are made, for example, in the Commission, and so on. So I don't know if academia is more vocal about, let's say, research priorities, but they might have just more time per definition to influence some of the content. And also my message would be a call for action for European companies and businesses and industries to take an accountable position in societal change. Now, why I say societal change is that this autonomous shipping is not just something to do with shipbuilding, and it's not engine manufacturing or things like that, but it's a very cross-cutting phenomena. It is actually a phenomena of modern, let's say, mobility services or logistics services. It's very data-driven business that can be taken by, again, companies like Alibaba's and Amazon's and Google's and what have you. So therefore, we are entering into an era that is very different from current situation. If I think of my previous company, Rolls-Royce, and our main business, just 3 years ago, it was more like selling propellers, and that's it. And it was very, let's say, solid customer base, very solid needs. We understood the dynamics of the business and so on. But boy, when you enter into this digital world, then you don't really know anymore who's your customer. Who will buy what kinds of ships. Where do those ships go, and to whom to talk, and with which language and what technologies. So that's important. So I would just say that I would take accountability to us, let's say, as industrial companies, to do that. And why is it important to be active now? My belief is that the existing business that is providing profits for companies can fund these investments in, for example, technical development. If you wait too long, your business has already been eroded to an extent that you can spend less and less into new technologies. So if you come in too late, you are in a cost-based business and you are fighting against China and all. You don't have a penny to invest in tech development. So you have to find a balance. I would say that it's probably better to explore very early on new phenomena and try to find what's in it for you as for companies, rather than wait too late. And if there is a culture of denial that the change doesn't touch us, then you need to start to see, let's say, statistics about the profits and the profitability of companies as a whole, profitability of various industries, how they develop, because the only option is that you are maintaining the profitability of those things. Then about this Harari book, I was thinking of bringing that also. So when it comes to automation, it's quite difficult to see that would the general public in the union be just side lookers, when there are messages of higher levels of automation. Do those people actually listen to real information? That automation actually is not a synonym to unemployment, or do they listen to a popularistic movement? So my fear is that Europe, being a liberal democracy, allowing public debate and citizen debate, is that we might start to see also movements that are raising up this Harari's one vision of let's say, automation as a threat to employment. Basically, I think it is fear. But this is something that we need to have a proper public debate, fact-based debate, and the Commission needs to participate very proactively in all social media to sort out any misunderstandings or disinformation regarding, for example, especially the artificial intelligence. What does it do? What does it not do? There are now also let's say, trends to ban certain applications of artificial intelligence. When it comes to ethical questions like face recognition, those are important things, and there you need to protect the citizens. But there are also misbeliefs in that. So I think that is important. Then one final word about, let's say, European possibilities as a digital economy. That I was participating in one workshop about platform economy, and we came up with a solution that was called Life as a Service. And I just bring it up here today for you. I mean, it hasn't been publicly presented, but it's something that we don't always see where this platform economy might be leading to. And it might also lead into a dystopy, and it might lead into something that is so attractive to us, it's so inexpensive, so effective to run our things, that it might take over a lot of our lives. If you think of your parking apps and your car fueling apps. When you take your first car rental app, those car fueling and parking apps are sub-apps to that car rental app. So that, you don't have to really do anything. You just go with your car and all those other apps do that. But today, you already have apps for rental living, so you could just have accommodation or living as a service. You can order your food, you can order education to some extent and health services to some extent. But once these start to sort of integrate to each other, then it's very difficult to wind back, let's say, the extreme efficiencies of such integrated digital platforms in our private lives. This is not really anything to do with autonomous shipping, but it's more just to say that this platform economy that is automatically streaming our revenues or our money, to non-European players, it is a real risk. So we have to take this into account when we are renewing and modernizing our societies, that if we are making bad choices, it might be that some of those American, for example, platform operators' solutions and services are so attractive that we kind of just personally make a decision to go for them. And we might erode locally produced European services when that happens. Just leave it to you as a thought, and I'm very happy to give more information to that topic also, because it's a bit complex. Thank you.
Thank you, Sauli. In short, you recommend to read also the books of Harari, yes, and also to establish the ambassadors of trust within industrial ecosystems. I think that might be very wise recommendation for the state governance as well. Eve, you have a lot of experience in the EU-Japan cooperation. How do you think, in your opinion, is the European Union developing fast enough when you take into account the development in Japan? And how shall the ongoing trade wars slow down the international cooperation in innovations and R&D cooperation, and taking especially the USA, because could this be an obstacle in the future as well in the field of digital cooperation? Eve, please.
Thank you very much. When it comes to Japan, then as we know, with Japan from the 1st of February this year, there is a EU-Japan economic partnership agreement in place. And this agreement also includes the chapter on data. So it means that with Japan, we have a good basis in terms of strengthening digital economy. In addition, with Japan, we do cooperate a lot in various fields where we have a mutual interest for this. For instance, with Japan, we have lots of cooperation in the field of robotics, also Internet of Things, in the field of research and development. So we really do cooperate a lot with them. And in addition, it's not only cooperation between authorities, but also cooperation between universities and enterprises. And perhaps not every person knows that, for instance, this EU funds for developing research and development, Horizon 2020 and Horizon Europe, these are also open for companies cooperating with partners outside of Europe. So these are also open for developing joint technological solutions together with Japanese partners, for instance. And I really would encourage to use these funds for this purpose. But as it was mentioned also earlier, when it comes to the investments to research and development, it's true that we need to increase funds also at EU level for these purposes, because at the moment it's only a little bit more than 8% of total EU budget what goes for developing innovation in the EU, and definitely that's not enough. But of course, it's not only the something what we need to tackle at EU level. It's shared responsibility, and also member states need to prioritize more investments in innovation and invest more in this. When it comes to the global trade and global rule setting, I personally prefer to have more global rules setting in digital and AI field, because I do believe that we create better standards on this case. I mentioned the EU-Japan EPA, which has regulated data, but also we know that such kind of forums like G20, G7, recently they all have focused on digital issues and data issues and also artificial intelligence. So these are good forums where to settle common understanding and principles for developing, for instance, AI. And also WTO in terms of e-commerce, to my mind.
Aida, Eve.
Thank you.
I think if I haven't mistaken, Estonia is one of the front runners in gene banks. Gene, and
yes, genome, yes.
Yes, exactly. And is there something, lessons to be learned by others from Estonian experience? Because
maybe. Yes, indeed. But when we spoke a lot about importance to have the proper access to data and to make sure that data flow at the digital single market. When it comes to our genome project in Estonia, for instance, then it's the project where citizens on voluntary basis, they gave the test and they gave basically their very personal data for further analyzing. And the purpose of this is, of course, to come up more innovative health solutions in future. But this is one example how in Estonia we try to launch innovative solutions. Yes, but I don't think that this could work maybe in some other countries. Maybe Estonians are not aware enough about their rights regarding the health data, or they are simply very eager to support all kind of innovative solutions. I can't imagine that such kind of... I spoke with my colleague earlier about this, and he just said to me that in Germany it couldn't be possible that you give the access for your health data. But when, for instance, cooperation in public sector and cross-border data exchange, then, for instance, in between of Finland and Estonia, we also have a properly functioning data exchange in the health field. And, for instance, thanks to this, we can enjoy digital prescriptions now. But also there are other fields where we have this cross-border data exchange, like in education and in other fields. So it works also in cross-border sense in Europe, and I would like to see more such kind of cooperation all over the Europe. Thank you.
Thank you, Eve. Let's give a hand to her as well. Ulrich, Germany is the biggest economic engine of the European Union and one of the largest traders in the whole world. Recently, the German economy has shown signs of economic decline, and some analysts have suggested that Germany should now invest more in its digital infrastructure and digital ecosystem. Ulrich, as you are president of permanent study group of the digital agenda, you are in excellent position to say what should Europe do to become smarter and more intelligent. Ulrich, please.
I think to a large extent we are already doing quite a lot and the right things. I'm quite impressed about the presentations we had here, the recent minutes ago about the very successful development of DITEC, or yesterday the shipyard, the world leadership. So Europe has many fields which are competitive, which have the potential for growth and for more jobs and for success. But we are going a different way. Maybe what you just referred to, that there might be an economic decline this year or next year, I don't know. This is something happening just now. But the overall development is different. And so the general development we have to look at is that Europe goes a different way than the US or China. Many things which are possible in the US are not possible here. And many things which happen in China we don't want. So Europe has different values. And I'm convinced, we don't know yet exactly what the way is we have to go and what kind of regulations. But if we find the right way, I think I'm convinced that at the end we will provide products and services which are competitive because they are based on European values and, for example, are more trustworthy. Now, the key element of supporting our progress is research. This is many of you already mentioned this, and I only want to say Horizon 2020 was a success story. It was an excellent example of cross-border cooperation and European added value. And now with Horizon Europe, for the next framework program, I think we are quite happy that the Commission has put again a high weight on funding this for the next MFF, and I think Mia Petra said the same. This is something we have to go for, and this has priority. And this we have to see that research, which is an integral part also of higher education. So all the skills we need for future developments are at the end based on work done within a certain research projects. So higher education and research is an integral system, and the more we are supporting research, the more we provide the skills we need. And of course also the ideas for further innovation. So this is key, and I think Europe is doing the right things. What is still a problem is that, of course, the European funding is only a minor part of the overall R&D funding. It's the countries which have to provide the funding. And I was very surprised about what I just heard about the aims. Finland has 4%, you said. No? This is a high number. Congratulations! I hope you achieve this. But this has also to be done in other countries. There's a large diversity in Europe, and we mentioned this quite often in our opinions. That this has to be overcome. This is key, and we should send this message to all the other countries as well. This is the way we should go. We also have appreciated very much that in Horizon Europe, the fact that innovation will get a higher weight. We have appreciated. So innovation means, in this sense, in R&D, funding at the end of the innovation chain, so closer to the market. This is something where we are very good in basic research, very good in long-term research, but bringing things to the market sometimes is hampered. And giving more weight to that is a new element in Horizon Europe. So we welcome this, and it will be in particular important for SMEs. More than for the larger companies. The larger companies don't need that much of funding, but nevertheless they appreciate very much European funding because they can use the networking, they use the cross-border cooperation, the collaborative approach. This is the key for success, but we heard it from DITEC. Now, Europe has also developed a strategy for digital Europe, and this program has 4 elements. One, high performance computing, and high performance computing means that we also want to enable European industries to provide the microchips we need for high performance computing. This is today not the case. We have to import. We fully depend on imports, and this is the strategy I think we should support and welcome. Second, support for artificial intelligence. Third, cybersecurity and trust. Fourth, advanced skills. I already mentioned this. And 5, digital technologies throughout the economy and society. I think this is also triggered by the example of Estonia, the example of Finland, that society should more accept these new digital tools. We discuss in our committee quite often also, of course, the risks. You can imagine that there are quite many risks and dangers. The biggest fear is always about jobs. We heard it, the book of Harari brings it to the extreme. But we should be optimistic. And I recommend very much look to history. Look what happened the last 30, 40 years. We are not at the very beginning of digitalization. We are in the middle. Or we have already gone quite far. How many jobs disappeared during the last 40 years? And how many new jobs, and jobs which never existed before, have been created? And today we have much more many people working than it was the case 40 years ago. So there is no doubt that that all these developments lead to more wealth, to more possibilities in our society, and so we will all profit. But of course, we have to be flexible. We have to adapt to these situations, and this is only possible via a good education. So we need the skills, but not narrow skills. We need broad education. The world is changing, and one never knows what is in 2-3 years. So one needs a broad education and a lifelong learning. There is no doubt. This is something we always repeat. Lifelong learning is. There's no way around this. And there are many other things we also could discuss, risks like human autonomy, responsibility, security, dignity, privacy. This is an ongoing discussion we have. How much regulation do we need here and there? But I think it will be important for all companies in future that it's not only important that, as it is now, to say that they are green and energy efficient. I think a new element will be that they take care about these digital issues and that they show transparent processes and products which are reliable and trustworthy. This can be will be, I think, in future a very important element for all companies. And finally, a word about AI. We can say we talk a lot about AI. I like very much. In one of our events we had, there was somebody saying one should start to demystify AI. I think the book of Harari does the opposite. It mystifies AI. AI is changing everything. We have no work anymore, and we never. In future, things changing dramatically. I think we should demystify AI for the next decades, at least. I think these things will not happen. AI tools are tools. Whenever you look into any application, is it a medical application where AI can help to identify a certain disease and helps the medical doctor, but he's never taking a decision. But it's a tool. It's a tool it's also a tool with the autonomous ships, as we heard. You said clearly, these ships have humans on board. They use this as a tool. It's a safety issue. It's more efficient. But it doesn't replace the humans. But the humans can rely on these tools and it will helpful. And there are many other applications where AI is a tool. In legal applications, it can help to analyze a case and provide text. But there must be a lawyer or some human which at the end takes the decision. So AI is a tool, nothing but a tool. Don't be afraid about AI. But one has to learn the limits, one has to learn the limitations, and there's the most interesting, and this is the final thing I want to say, we have to work on AI from the ethical point of view, and the Commission has set up a high-level expert group, and they have presented recently a draft ethics guidelines for trustworthy AI. And this is now intended to be tested. This year they start a test phase where in certain sectors these guidelines will be tested under the umbrella of the European AI Alliance. And this is discussed also just now in our committee. We will just have a meeting on Monday about this, where we discuss trustworthy AI in the automotive sector. And there is something we would like to propose. This is the last thing I want to say. There are people who believe that one can control AI or can exactly define how the AI system is working. But this is in many areas where you have machine learning not possible. Even those who have done the programming don't know the outcome of these programs. And but there is another approach, and this approach is to develop test methods which where a certain AI system is undergoing thorough testing, and then it is tested is there any bias, is there any prejudice in the system, are there certain things which can be dangerous, so there's a catalog of things one could test. So one could introduce standard tests and then finally give a stamp to certain systems that this has been tested. But maybe the most interesting idea I find is that maybe we could develop in Europe a certificate, a kind of European Trusted Enterprise certificate, which where a certain company shows that how they are developing products, how they are developing AI and using it, and how they are worked in a transparent way, so that they are really based on the values we think are important for us. So such a certificate could be an important step forward, and it would be a European brand and could be useful worldwide. But this is something we still have to discuss, and it's not yet written. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So European certificate, broad and flexible and lifelong education, and don't be afraid of artificial intelligence. 3 points which I would underline from the previous presentation. In the beginning I promised to give you a floor, and it seems that my wristwatch is still in summertime, but I think Tellervo mentioned that we can exceed our time by a couple of minutes, so fast questions, but very fast. Please, gentlemen over there.
Member of the EESC Employers Group, and it's fantastic to be back here in Åbo, Turku. But I cannot go back to Stockholm without expressing some of the concerns of the business community in Sweden. And there are a lot of opportunities here, but there are also a lot of risks. And we have to also acknowledge that there are some ideas presented at the European level, which are really detrimental and harmful for the digital agenda. And I'm thinking of the area of taxation. There is now proposals to tax the use of data and to tax the platforms, and that will affect all businesses, not only the big American companies. And I have to say that all Swedish businesses like AB Volvo, Atlas Copco, Ericsson, Sandvik are all identifying how to change their business model because of these turnover taxes and cascading taxes. And there are new rules coming out in a couple of years from the OECD, where you will also allocate taxation revenue to the country where you sell your products. And we have a finance minister in Sweden, Magdalena Andersson, Social Democrat. She fully recognizes that she will lose billions of euros in corporate tax revenue from these proposals. So there are major threats, both for the government and for businesses. And we have to also have that in mind when we have such a wonderful time here in Turku. There are major risks. And we have to acknowledge that big countries do not like competition from smaller countries, and in particular not in the digital area. And that is exactly where we will be hurt in the smaller countries with the advanced business models and the use of the new technology. So we really hope that the Finnish presidency and Finland can help Sweden and other small countries to get a good balance in the new development. Otherwise, there will be problems also for such a proud facility as the shipyard here in Turku. I was there yesterday, and I have to admit, I almost felt sorry for them because they don't know what's going to hit them down the road. So we also have to take note of that part. I'm sorry to bring the bad message at the end, but I think it's important. Thank you.
As we are closing very soon, I would like to give the final word to Mr. Kravchuk, please. Or could we, Mr. President, could we just have a very short comment or question from there?
Thank you very much. Dimitris Dimitriadis, Employers Group, EESC. Okay, this panel is really very important for all of us, and all this information are extremely important. But because I'm an entrepreneur and I'm coming from the real world and not from the academia, real world I mean from the businesses, I want to make a very short question. For how many thousands of companies we are discussing here? Artificial intelligence, Internet of Things, okay, robotics, for how many thousands? Because I am Vice President of SME United, the most important European organization for SMEs. We are 24 million in the European Union, from the Atlantic to the Black Sea and the whole Mediterranean, 24 million. And I don't disagree with my friend, Professor Sam, about how important tool it is, Horizon 2020. For how many businesses we are speaking? 100,000, 200,000, 300,000. I'm speaking for 24 million. Can anybody from the panel explain to me what will be happening in a small bakery in Krakow or in a butcher shop in Porto? Can we discuss what will be happen in the small, medium enterprises with artificial intelligence and computers the next 10 years? How we will survive, how the SMEs will survive with this new situation? We don't have knowledge, we don't have capitals, we don't have access to the finance, we don't have this kind of technologies in our companies. Thank you.
Thank you so much. If there are any volunteers from the panel to answer this question. Mia-Petra, shortly, please.
I think 24 million of those uses some IT solutions, and then we have to work on the European level to take care that it will be safe, and then also respect the needs and not to be extremely expensive to use the payment method. We do have European solutions for the mobile pay, things like that. So yes, you are in the middle of it, using the innovations that are done somewhere, and I hope they are more benefiting the European ecosystem. So I don't see anything opposite, that not everybody is innovating, but then who they are, the users should be protected as well, very small entrepreneurs as well.
very shortly.
Yeah, only a very short remark. I said already in Horizon Europe, there will be more innovation support, and this means that they will introduce support for innovation hubs. These are technology centers which are then open for, in particular for the SMEs, or only for the SMEs. I don't know whether they will help the butcher or the baker at the corner, but at least the small companies who are not able to make big new developments will have access to this know-how in these innovation hubs, which will be supported by the EU. It's at least a good way, maybe not enough.
And final word to President Kravchuk, please.
Thank you. I just wanted to thank the panelists really for the very interesting discussion. I mean, it was very enriching. My final comment and suggestion is that I think it's also very important that we make an effort to engage more private sector to this endeavor, not only as a beneficiary of European funding, but also as the one that needs to be also somehow convinced, assisted, supported, collateralized, to get more engagement also with private funding, which I think is also something that we are very weak as a continent. While our competition is using a lot of private funding to make a big progress coming from the private sector, Europe is building those structures at the EU level, including EU budget, which is at the end of the day below 1% of our GDP. It is important indeed, the initiatives are, but please keep this in mind that private sector must be a part of that, and I think the more the private sector gets engaged, the better. Thank you.
Thank you for these words, and I would like to also thank the panelists for excellent speeches and discussion. And now I would transfer to Tellervo, who will conclude what we have said. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and dear participants of this seminar. I'm very happy to have this final word after this forward-looking panel discussion, which was very diverse, but which I also found to be quite unanimous. And I have a feeling that this morning session has clearly confirmed that smart and intelligent Europe is something that is already here today. But at the same time, I would say that we have an impression that it is something that is a vision for the future. Maybe not a dream, but a vision. While we have very often heard that Europe is lagging behind the other global players, I was so happy to hear that here it was many times emphasized that Europe has many strengths, and openness was mentioned as one vital strength here. But anyway, I think that either reaching or staying in on the forefront of a development requires hard work. And what is always clear is that we need to make full use of the cooperation between the EU member states. And above all, Europe needs to believe in innovation and competition. And what I would like to emphasize is that Europe has to be consistent, very consistent in this approach, and really rely on these innovation and competition. We heard today a very, very interesting example, a case from the maritime sector, and in this context it was emphasized the great importance of business ecosystems and also wider ecosystems. And creation of trust was something that I picked from this speech, and the other one was the need for experimentation, which needs both technological and regulatory sandboxes, as we say, test areas or test opportunities. Particularly here in Finland, we believe not only in innovation, but maybe I could even say particularly in education. And in the AI era, I would say that we need a completely different approach to learning and teaching. With this, I mean that instead of proceeding in a common pipeline, we will need individual learning design in quote marks. It was also mentioned that, and I myself firmly believe that to succeed in the global competition, we need both high-level talent and a broad base of educated and skilled people, also in the AI topic or issue, as well as in digitalization in general. What can the policymakers then do, and what they should do? That was, of course, a main question in this panel. It was mentioned, it was emphasized that the single market of data is one fundament of the development of smart and intelligent Europe, and I personally fully agree with that. And so we need to ensure the free flow of data, and of course, together with appropriate data protection. And we need to create common European platforms for data. It was referred that so far the big giants from America and Asia have grasped mainly the business-to-consumer platform markets. But what I would like to raise is that there might be a huge potential for business-to-business platforms, which really might be a competitive edge for Europe. So think about that. Of course, it is also about money, but it was said that maybe it is not so much a matter of the amount of money, but what is most important is where to allocate the money. And now I'm speaking about the public money. And again, would like to emphasize the role of innovation and education and infrastructure, which were mentioned as main targets for allocation of public money. But as we heard as in the first comment, it is not at all only a matter of public money, but it's to a great extent of a question of private money. Regulation, which was discussed a lot yesterday, to my mind, it's of course it has a role to play. It's needed to guarantee fair competition. It's needed to for appropriate consumer protection, for example. It has also been said that ethics would be a competitive advantage to Europe, and it's related to the openness, the trustworthy AI ethical principles, which was referred to, are definitely important in the European context and also in the global context. But what I would like to add is that it doesn't mean that it could replace the other elements, components of competitiveness. And to my mind, as the global race is truly hard on all fronts, I think it's crucial that the EU provides the overall business environment, which is enabling, encouraging, and which stimulates our enterprises to innovate, invest, and trade. Finally, I would like to make a reference to a very interesting discussion here in Turku last week, which was in the context of the Turku Music Festival. And that discussion was about business and arts, and it also touched artificial intelligence. In this discussion, AI was seen to have a big potential to enable different kinds of art performances and also expand artistic experience. But on the other hand, it was recognized that there are many things that business can learn from arts. And it was particularly referred to the approach of blending, breaking, and bending, which are the main elements or sources of creativity. So I think that by means of a favorable business environment and together with blending, breaking, and bending, we could even make the wildest dreams of smart and intelligent Europe come true. So, ladies and gentlemen, with these concluding words, I would like to once again thank all the speakers, all organizers of this event, as well as all of you for participating and contributing to this event. And finally, I would like to wish all the best for the Turku Eurooppa-forum also in the coming years. Thank you very much. Okay. We are ready.